Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and happy Easter. Well, I started my way through that, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. And yes, happy Easter to everyone, and welcome back to day 767 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And on this Easter day, we're learning that Russia is running around the U.S. with a directed energy weapon, of all things. Who would have guessed? But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and everything else that pertains to the news of the war in Ukraine around the world. But we've been getting some very major news today, with the spring conscription coming around and Russia mobilizing another 150,000 troops, to the Belarusians teaching kids how to fight in a war, to armed uprisings happening inside of southern Russia, from the Russian Navy pretty much blockading itself in its own port, to the brain scrambler inside the United States, to everything else in between. There is a lot to cover today, an endless amount of news to cover. It's all major breaking news, and we're of course going to be covering it here on this channel. But before we get into that, we of course have to say that tonight is a big night. It is the Sunday fundraiser night, and for none other than Razom For Ukraine, an amazing nonprofit. Let's go, baby! An amazing nonprofit organization that has been providing help to Ukrainian civilians and citizens throughout the entirety of the war. Not only that, to the armed forces of Ukraine in a limited capacity as well. They're an absolutely incredible nonprofit who has been helping to provide food and shelter to Ukrainian families that have been displaced from the war, and not only that, they have done amazing things such as providing full scholarships to soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces who would like to try and go into careers after they're out of the military, or when they become veterans. This is a big thing and a massive thing. And not only that, this day is a very fortunate day, as it is Easter, a very big holiday here in the United States, celebrating the rebirth of Jesus after the 3 days that he was inside of the tomb. It is a fairly big day, at least for me and Matthew, as we're both Christians, but for everyone else as well, whether you're a Christian or not. And this day, much like many others, are always about being kind to the innocents and wanting to help them out as best as we can. And there are many people inside of Ukraine who would be very fortunate to receive the support and the grace of the Lee Spring Army tonight in this fundraiser. The goal is a $3,000 goal, and I know one thing for certain: the Lee Spring Army never misses a goal, and I know that tonight, of every night, we will make sure to hit that goal and probably go well beyond it. I hope so. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into the major news. Also, it's resurrection, not the rebirth. But anyways, moving on from that, we are going to be moving into the city of Moscow, where we got to hear that 150,000 Russians have been called up to serve. According to a decree by the office of the president of the Russian Federation, which is Putin, led by the Putin regime, yada yada, all that stuff. Putin has signed a decree on the routine spring conscription into the army, and from April 1st to July 15th, 150,000 people between the ages of 18 and 30, which was previously 27, but they've now expanded it to 30 to try and get more conscripts, are planned to be called up for military service in Russia. Here's the presidential decree right here. We also have a barcode at the bottom, and I scanned it, and it came up as an apple at $1.99 a pound. But beyond that, this right here is the official announcement from the Russian Federation, saying that another 150,000 conscripts will be put into the meat grinder and will become cannon fodder on the front lines in Ukraine. This isn't necessarily anything too shocking, as we know that these are fairly routine, but it is still, of course, once again indicating and showing to us that it is largely not going well for them. The president of Russia actually gets to choose how many conscripts are conscripted in the spring and the fall, in between a certain period of time, and it appears that this time they're going with a fairly large number. This is one of the larger numbers that we've seen. In prior times, it was 100,000. In other times before that, it had gotten up to 120,000, but this is one of the largest ones that we've seen in the war, of 150,000 soldiers being put into the Russian army. A lot of these guys may not even make it out of the Russian army. After these conscripts are sent to Ukraine, they could end up dying there, or they could end up having to serve until duration, as their unit will never be rotated out of Ukraine for them to ever be dismissed from the armed forces. Meaning that pretty much this is just another 150,000 bodies that are going to go into Ukraine until the war ends, or until they're all dead and wounded and sent home that way. But moving on from that big news of the night, we got massive news that is actually pretty crazy when you hear about it, but we're going to be saving that for just a little bit later, because we've been getting some very interesting and shocking news out of Russian activities inside the United States. But we're actually going to be moving down briefly into the area of the town of Makachkala, Makachkala, I believe is how that's pronounced, and I'm only going to say it that way and never again, because I think I'm getting that wrong every single time I say it. Nevertheless, it is a city that is on the Caspian Sea within the very southern part of the Russian Federation. Very close. Actually, it is right next door to Chechnya and Ingushetia. And we saw today that the FSB did quote-unquote anti-terrorist operations in the area and appeared to be smoking someone out of their apartment building. We believe that this is actually a part of the continued actions or hostilities in between the Ingushetian Liberation Army inside of Ingushetia and also the Southern Caucasus Mountain region, and also the Russian FSB, which has been tasked with dealing with this uprising and trying to put it down. We can see them here watching the apartment filled with smoke as they all just sit out in the street just watching it happen. And that's the end of the clip right there, but just showing y'all that there is some ongoing activity within that region of Russia. Once again, we believe it's a part of the armed conflict and the armed uprising happening in that area, but we're not exactly certain. We're going to be waiting to try and get more information and news about what happened here, although usually news comes to a dead end quite quickly when it's coming out of the Russian Federation. So we'll hopefully get some news in the future, but I would not really count on that all too much. But moving on from that and over into the area of Novorossiysk inside of the Russian port, or more so inside of the Vostochny Rayon, which is the naval portion of the port of Novorossiysk, we saw today that apparently the Russian Navy is attempting to blockade itself inside of the port and stop itself from going out, but also stopping other stuff from coming in. We can see right here that the Russians are taking smaller barges and they're beginning to line the entrance of the Vostochny Rayon, the naval quarter of the harbor inside of Murmansk, or actually Novorossiysk. Sorry, Murmansk is a totally different place. But we can see them here pretty much blockading it so that way Ukrainian naval drones cannot enter the port and try and attack the extremely vulnerable ships that are within. A lot of these ships are placed at these piers here at the very inner side, or the eastward side of Vostochny Rayon. And most of these are actually larger ships at this point in the war. We've seen frigate and destroyer-sized ships being based out of this area, and it goes to show that the Russians are very scared of these incoming drone attacks by the Ukrainians, the naval drone attacks, and not only that, they're trying to keep their navy at least somewhat surviving throughout the war, or at least to survive till the end of the war. Whether they're ever going to be able to do that with any real success or not is yet to be seen, but we do see that they're once again trying to stop any drones from entering Vostochny Rayon, which also stops the fleet from ever being able to leave. We also see some anti-ship nets that have been set up, or anti-submarine nets, that have been set up on the southeastern side of the entrance, right over here. This appears to once again be an attempt to stop Ukrainian drones from easily entering, and trying to make them pretty much go through an obstacle course to make their way into the only small opening that heads into Vostochny Rayon. Nevertheless, it is showing that the Russian Navy is most likely going to be inactive throughout the rest of the war, and anything that is within the port of Novorossiysk will most likely never be used again, at least within the Ukrainian theater of operations, and will remain there in Novorossiysk until the end of the war.
They better hide them while they can, because I'm telling you what, Ukraine's increasing their reach every other day, and they've knocked out so many ships up to this point, they've caused Russia to become basically paranoid about like moving their ships anywhere, except further away from Ukraine and Crimea.
Dude, right now the Russians are going, man, what about to put these things down in Ochimshira, literally the farthest south that they can go. It's pretty much within Georgia. Illegally, it is within the country of Georgia. They're going to try and put some of the Navy down there to get them as far away as possible from the Ukrainian naval drones. But we have to talk about some big things that actually happen in the United States. And I'm not sure if we should have made this the title tonight, and I actually don't have a lot here on the map about this, but today we have been able to hear about the Brain Scrambler. We finally have apparently gotten some good information on what the Havana syndrome actually is, because a lot of people were very concerned that when U.S. officials within the capital of Havana, Cuba, came down with a very bad affliction of just being messed up in the head, which is kind of normal in American politics, but these people were more so messed up in the head. Many people were wondering, what the hell is going on? And what in the world is happening to these folks? Not only that, it began to happen all over the place for a pretty large amount of time, and pretty frequently for that matter, for a good bit. And people were getting more and more concerned about what was happening and what was causing this. based off of information that has been able to be uncovered today, we've apparently found out that it is a specific FSB group that has been using some kind of a directed energy weapon to pretty much scramble the brains of the people who are the targets. This is a fairly concerning thing, and I know that I'm not explaining this in perfect technical terms, so sorry for that, but this is the best I can explain it to y'all at the moment. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about this and what in the world are the Russians planning on doing with this, because we know that the FSB unit that supposedly is operating this weapon and is currently roaming free in the United States somewhere are apparently part of a KGB unit that conducts espionage in Western countries and also tries to conduct assassinations on anyone who is selected as a target for the Russian government. There has been a lot of talk about this today and what they're planning on doing, and Matthew, you might want to talk about this a little bit more and what you think about it, because I know you're the one who really looked into the story heavily today.
Yes, so we asked the audience about their thoughts about U.S. intel revealing Russia's top secret FSB division that was revealed to be behind the Havana syndrome attacks. 63% said Russia is targeting all top U.S. officials, 14% said Russia's only targeting certain people, and 18% were unsure, while 5% said it might not be Russia and it might be someone else. And if y'all haven't watched it, it was a report on 60 Minutes that came out tonight, and several different journalists were involved in the story. It was a pretty big project going on for almost a year now, and they revealed that our diplomats and also our officials have been targeted with some type of directed energy weapon that is fielded by some top secret division of the Russian GRU, and apparently they're on the loose in the USA with that weapon, and even people outside of the White House have been hit by it, and apparently have gotten some traumatic brain injuries from it as well, which has caused some major issues with their health. And according to one guy that they were interviewing in the 60 Minutes piece, he believed that American top officials are being, quote unquote, neutralized by Russian agents using those weapons. So if it's causing a TBI, that is very, very bad news for the mental state of these officials is getting hit with this weapon, and certainly quite concerning that this thing's on the loose. And apparently our intelligence people don't know where this weapon is. They don't know how large it is or how compact the weapon is. But it clearly has some destructive power behind it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that's very concerning to hear that an existence of such a weapon is real. For the longest time, I actually believed that it was probably just something else. Maybe people were, having bad food or something like that. They were trying to describe it to some kind of a super secret Russian, brain scrambler. But it appears that the super secret brain scrambler is in fact a real deal. And going off of that, I would have to say that they're possibly just targeting top officials. Probably not all of them, probably just targeted ones at specific moments, because interestingly enough, they have not ended up attacking many or any, from what I understand, of the representatives of the U.S. Congress or the senators of the U.S. Congress. So that's a fairly good sign, maybe showing that they're not going after everyone with this thing. They're just going after a small set amount of people. I would have to say that it's really concerning. I actually don't really know how to make much of this because it's very concerning sounding, but I don't really know how in the world this is supposed to be combated. Once again, it's really hard to find this weapon. No one's been able to find it yet. It's apparently roaming around the United States somewhere, and I have a feeling that a lot of effort and resources should most likely be diverted by the FBI, most likely, considering that they're the ones that deal largely with internal affairs, and the CIA to try and figure out where this unit is from, what unit it specifically is, and also where this weapon may be in the United States, so that way they can try and neutralize it at least within our own borders. There are apparently other ones out there as well, because we do understand that U.S. diplomats first were afflicted by the Havana syndrome inside of Havana, Cuba. That's where the name for the syndrome comes from in the first place. So hopefully they can find this thing, but otherwise it'll be very concerning, considering that this thing is just wandering around willy-nilly, free willy, throughout the entirety of the country. But beyond that,
Also remember, Enforcer, back when the Havana syndrome first started to really gain media attention, and it happened down in Cuba in Havana because of the name Havana syndrome, the U.S. government came out and said, it's just a bunch of hogwash, basically. There's nothing to it. It's just a bunch of mass insanity, basically. People are just losing their minds, and it's nothing. But now we're learning it's not mass insanity. They've been hit with some type of probably a microwave weapon of some sort, directed energy. I don't really know anything about it. Couldn't explain it to you if I wanted to. But the fact that it is actually a real weapon being used by Russians, apparently, according to the 60 Minutes report, that's quite a change from what we were told previously.
That is a huge change, and I'd have to say that that is very shocking and concerning, and hopefully someone gets to the bottom of this and figures it out, so that way this doesn't continue on the way it does. We don't really know how the weapon works. We really know nothing about this weapon and what its actual intention is. From what we understand, some of the long-term effects of Havana syndrome are memory loss, amongst many other things, and also the loss of the ability to coherently think and speak, which is also a very interesting side effect of the weapon. So, once again, we don't really know a lot about this thing. Apparently, people are still trying to figure out more about it, but a big hit piece was made on it today, which was pretty shocking and pretty incredible to hear. Well, not incredible in a great way, but incredible to hear that such a thing exists and that these folks were able to try and at least piece together the picture the best they possibly could. But with that, I hope that does address that well. While the fundraiser has made it to a whopping $1,300. Pretty impressive. And hopefully it can make it even farther. I think Matthew was supposed to be screaming there, but it sounds like the microphone already picked it up. Okay, and it cut out again. That's it. All I'm hearing, Matthew, is, and that's it. It's like the microphone just gives up. It's like, no, I'm not listening. There we go. And hopefully we can make it on up to $3,000 tonight on the goal, baby. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best we can at the moment, and I actually do not have any markers down on the map for the whole brain-scrambling Havana syndrome deal. But moving on from that, and back into the area of Russia, and also the greater Ukrainian world, or the Ukraine war world, we're going to be moving on down into the area of the small village of Krasnoarmeysk, where we got to see that the Russian air defense ended up shooting down one of their own missiles deep inside of Russian territory. This is a KH-101 missile that ended up being shot down and crashed in a field just outside of this village. From what we understand, it was shot down very close to its launch site by Russian air defense, showing that the Russian air defense and the Russian air forces have absolutely no communication with each other, and this once again leads us to believe that the attack on the A-50 that brought it down over the Krasnodar region was most likely conducted by Russian ground air defense forces, as it was a much more likely scenario in that event than it would have been for a Ukrainian S-200 to reach that far and end up hitting a A-50 command aircraft. This is something interesting to see, and once again showing that the Russians are filled with a great deal of fear and pandemonium, even within the air defense forces, as they're shooting down anything that they believe may possibly be Ukrainian. At the exact same time, inside of Belarus, stupidity continues to run rampant. While Havana syndrome is starting to become a resurging thing here in the United States and a resurging topic of discussion, it appears that stupidity is something that really just never ends inside of the Russian world, or the Belarusian world for that matter, as we got to see today that a Belarusian school was teaching kids the way of the warrior and teaching them a little bit of martial knowledge about how wars are fought. This is the exact quotation that was given to us about these pictures. The authorities under the leadership of Lukashenko continue to actively involve school children in their militia. And this is also a part of them handling firearms. Of course, that's a big part of being in any armed force. And when you see this kid here, this spoiled brat, completely unappreciative of the amazing weapon that he has in front of him, this thing is called the AK-74SU, aka here in America called the Krink. And we can also see that the kid does not have the Krink stock on his shoulder. Goodbye to your eyeballs. Or goodbye to anyone nearby, because this kid's going to lose control of this thing rather quickly. But hey, child soldiers, you gotta admit, Lukashenko, he knows what he's doing. He's cooking, and let him cook. Moving on to the next picture, we can also see a very interesting mix of different kinds of weapons that these kids have been given access to, and we're just going to break them down. So, first off, we got a 40mm flare gun in the hands of the big kid here with a New York Yankees sweater. Overall, kid's got taste. But beyond that, not a 40mm grenade launcher, I'm sorry, it's actually a flare gun. Flare gun, a little odd. Then, wait a minute, hang on, hold up. So wait a minute, this kid here actually has a flare gun in one hand and a Makarov in the other. Fingers on the triggers, no trigger discipline to speak of.
Kimbo.
I mean, akimbo, and I don't think this is going to be that effective. We can also see our boy over here with the Krink. He's still got the Krink, and he's doing his thing. It doesn't look like he has his finger on the trigger, so that's good. And then way over here,
Timmy's in danger over there, though. Holding the one looking straight at the camera might be in danger. I think the dude over here holding the Krink is gonna maybe get him.
Yeah, the kid with the Krink is gonna shoot him and steal his gun. But we can see here that there's I don't know what the hell this is. It honestly kind of almost looks like a shotgun with the kind of barrel it has. might be a shotgun, some kind of a Saiga. I have absolutely no idea. But this picture is just a trip. I don't even understand what the point is of giving kids guns if you're not even going to teach them how to actually use them. I mean, you know, child soldiers is one thing. Having child soldiers that don't even know about trigger discipline, now that's a whole other thing. And say what throws in a $150 donation. Hey, bringing us up to almost $1,500. Impressive. And hopefully we'll hit that. Hopefully we'll hit that $3,000 goal here soon. But nevertheless, very interesting to see, and once again showing us that the Belarusians don't really have a lot going for them, at least in terms of the intelligence department. Giving kids guns with really no training is a terrible idea. Really giving a kid a gun at all is a terrible idea. So, gotta say, the Belarusians know what's up. With that, we're going to be moving on out of the Belarusian news and down on, and let me make sure that we covered all the Russian news, and we did. It's now time for us to move on into northern Ukraine, where we've actually been able to see and hear that Ukraine has built nearly 1,000 kilometers of fortifications along the northern border. This is according to the commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrskyi, and we can see a picture here of a large amount of dragon's teeth and also an anti-tank ditch being set up. It also looks like the anti-tank ditch has ended up turning into a moat as it's filled with water, but beyond that, it is great to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are doing everything they can to make sure that the northern front is never used again. It was actually this day, well, actually it was more so tomorrow, but this day 2 years ago, that the Russian forces retreated out of the northern areas of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians were ended up declaring a success in the Battle of Kyiv, the Battle of Chernihiv, the Battle of Sumy, the Battle of Konotov, the Battle of Kharkiv, the Battle of everything. It all ended up being won on this day 2 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think that that was 2 years ago, because it still feels like yesterday that I reported that the Russians retreated out of this area and the Ukrainians took it back. But hey, you know, time passes. Time does its thing. But moving on from that and into northern Kyiv, we also got to see a Gepard near the city. Pretty cool. Take a look at this Gepard. Isn't it beautiful?
Look at that guy posing in front of it too. He's like, "This is a my Gepard, bliat."
Man, I'm telling you what, he's proud of his Gepard blade. And I gotta say, the Gepard is something to be proud of. This Gepard appears to be a Gepard 1. One thing that's interesting, and something I haven't actually seen a lot, at least within Ukraine, and let me see if I can find one here. That's why I was trying to stall right there. I was like, can I find one of these before I talk about it? Nope, that one doesn't have it. Let me see if I can find another one. Dagnabbit, I cannot find it. Let me see. I'm so disappointed because there is a Gepard out there that has Stinger man pads mounted to the side near the Orlikons. Let me see if I can actually find a picture of one of these things, because they're a little bit slightly upgraded, a little bit more beefed up. Sadly, the only picture I can find, and I'm going to show it here, is from War Thunder. So sorry, everyone. I know it's not a real picture of the system, but this is the only one I could find quickly. So you can see the Gepard right there. This is what a Gepard 1A2 looks like, and it's a modernization of the Gepard, still with the 30mm Orlikons. There was no real upgrade to the primary armament, but they attached a secondary armament of 4 AIM-92 Stingers, which means that this thing can now also engage enemy air targets at distance with man pads, which is a great addition. We've never seen these in Ukraine so far, and we very rarely ever see these things anywhere else. Wait a minute, hang on. Finally, dude, there it is. There's a real Gepard 1A2 right there with the Stingers attached to the side of the turret and everything. That is what the best looking Gepard actually looks like as far as its abilities go. It has missiles, and it also has kinetics in the form of the main guns. So overall, this is one of the most effective kinds of air defense systems that can be made out of the Gepard. But still, we haven't seen any of these in Ukraine, sadly. But I gotta say, really cool to see and really great to know that there is a possibility for the Ukrainians to get these out there somewhere. Or if the Ukrainians have these FIM 92s, maybe they will be able to, I don't know, eventually mount them onto the side of a Gepard and try and make a Gepard 1A2 out of the thing. That would be pretty cool. But anyways, it's time for us to move on from that little bit of news and on into that air defense report, as that Gepard actually did help out in the air defense last night. Overnight, the Ukrainians were able to claim that 9 Shahed 136s were shot down, and 9 KH-101s and KH-555s were also shot down as well. A very successful night, and absolutely incredible to see that they were able to shoot down such a large number of drones and missiles. It once again is making sure the Ukraine skies are safe and that the Russians are not able to successfully hit their targets that they are trying to go for. But with that, that is the end of the air defense report right there, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat at the exact same time. And also, I got a very strong headache as soon as we went live on air. Matthew, I think the FSB is frying our brains. Oh, God! But beyond that, one thing I've been seeing in the live chat is that apparently people are having an issue with donating. And it's apparently because some people are using VPNs and it's no longer allowing them to donate. I was a little bit curious why the donation numbers are so low, because in 40 minutes, we usually end up reaching the fundraiser goal, and we're only halfway there tonight. So just to put this out there as a PSA, or, well, yeah, public safety announcement, whatever you want to call it, if you are running a VPN right now, you may not be able to donate to the fundraiser. If you turn off your VPN, you most likely will be able to donate to the fundraiser, so just keep that in mind if you would like to donate tonight on Easter night of all nights, and help out Razom For Ukraine with the Sunday night fundraiser. And so with that, I hope that we are eventually able to reach the goal, because it looks like we are getting there. We're eking our way up there little by little, and hopefully we will be able to make sure to hit that $3,000 goal tonight. But with that, we are going to be moving on into our next bit of news, which actually takes us back into Russia and to what the Free Russian Army's been up to. And what the Free Russian Army doing, Matthew? Well, they're doing plenty. A lot, as a matter of fact. Inside the Belgorod Oblast, we got to see that once again, the city of Belgorod is under artillery fire as a house got hit and caught on fire today. With that, that's the end of the clip right there, but once again showing us that the artillery bombardments on Belgorod are in fact continuing. Moving on from that and into the area of Gryvron, we also got to see that the Freedom of Russia Legion is continuing to fly its flag in the area and showing that they are in control of Gryvron and Kazinka. This is once again showing us that the Freedom of Russia Army is still there, although we don't get any video or picture evidence, really, of their existence within the Belgorod Oblast. Hopefully we will be hearing of more successes and continued success of the Free Russian Army within the region, but at the moment we're not seeing any advances at this point. From what we know, the Free Russian Army has stopped their advances where they are at the moment, and it doesn't appear that they're going to be continuing them anytime soon. We believe that that may be the case because Russian forces have ended up pretty much trapping these guys where they are. They can't really advance any further than that, and so they're pretty much just stuck there. Or the Free Russian Army doesn't have the manpower to be able to continue to conduct larger and more rapid advances towards the city of Belgorod. So this front line has largely ended up becoming dormant. But the Free Russian Army is still inside of Russia and still trying to do its thing, which is great to hear, and hopefully they'll be able to keep it up and keep the fight going, at least inside the Russian Federation. With that, it's now time for us to still talk a little bit more about what the Russians have been doing today, because the Russians actually officially blamed Ukraine for the Crocus City Hall attack as of just about, I think it was 12 to 14 hours ago, and the SBU, they demand that the chief of the SBU of Ukraine is handed over to the Russians to face justice. A lot of people are talking about their thoughts on this and what they think. And Matthew, what do you think about this particular instance? Do you think that the Ukrainians should hand over the chief of the SBU, or do you think they should tell the Russians to stuff it?
And most importantly, what did the audience think? And their thoughts on the issue of Russia formally accusing Ukraine of the Moscow attack, and like you said, demanding the SBU chief be handed over. 62% said Russia is still planning to escalate the situation, 30% said Russia is just trolling Ukraine about it, and 4% said it sounds a little bit ominous, but I need some more info. And that is true. The Russians officially demanded that the SBU chief of Ukraine be handed over to face justice. Obviously, that's never going to happen, so I want to lean toward the trolling direction, but then at the same time, both Putin and the FSB chief seem to be ramping up their rhetoric once again to try to basically turn that terrorist attack in Moscow into a false flag attempt once again. I was beginning to wonder if maybe they're going to let it go, but it looks like, based on this information we're receiving today, it looks like they're back to it once again, even though Lukashenko blew their story apart about the terrorists trying to flee back into Ukraine. They did that solely because Belarus turned them away. So they were trying to get into Lukashenko's country, but they didn't go there. They went back to Ukraine to try to get away. So I'm not really sure what Russia's planning to do here, but it looks like they are trying to escalate it in some way, shape, or form, but we'll just have to wait and see. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the Russians are using this moment to clearly try and escalate the war with Ukraine, probably to try and justify a full mobilization to the Russian public is what I'm believing, because once again, the story is not adding up, and we've gone over this time and time again on this channel. The original path that the ISIS terrorists were trying to take was through Belarus. They were trying to leave Russia and enter Belarus. They ended up not doing that because the Belarusians shut down their border to them to be able to cross, and so they ended up trying to go to Ukraine instead. And that's how they ended up being captured inside the Bryansk Oblast, not that far away from the city of Bryansk. That is why they were heading to Ukraine. There was no one waiting for them in Ukraine because that was not their original path, according to Lukashenko. Not only that, ISIS has continuously come out and said that there is absolutely no involvement whatsoever by any Western country, and the Russians are cowards because they're not wanting to credit them with the attack. So going off of all of that, it clearly makes no sense for the Russians to try and blame Ukraine for this and say that they're the ones behind it. They didn't create ISIS, they don't fund ISIS, they have nothing to do with ISIS, and ISIS hates them just like they hate everyone else in the Western world, or even in the Eastern European world, or inside the Russian world, or inside the world in general. They just hate everyone out there that you can find. So going off of that, I would have to say that it is a little silly for the Russians to try and blame it on Ukraine, but nevertheless they are going to attempt an escalation no matter the cost. And also, I have seen this so much in the live chat tonight. I hate to say this. I don't know if tonight we're going to actually be able to pass the fundraiser goal or not, because it seems as though a lot of people are just not able to donate because for some reason YouTube just isn't allowing them to. They're not showing the donate button or the give button. They're only showing buttons for super chats or super thanks, which shouldn't even exist on this stream. Those buttons shouldn't even be there. And then on top of that, for other people, they're saying that they're not able to donate at all, even when they try and donate, because YouTube is apparently having a quote-unquote error with processing some of the donations. That is something that I gotta say is really sad to see. We have noticed that in the past, YouTube has been making it slightly more difficult for donations to come through. I've actually had to switch over to donating here on the computer that I'm running the stream on while we're running it, instead of actually being able to do it through my phone, because I've been doing it on my phone for an incredibly long time, and now I cannot do that, and so I have to move on over to my computer to try and do it as well. So hopefully we can continue to fundraise and hit that $3,000 goal, because if we can, it's going to be the first time in Lee Spring Army history where the Lee Spring Army was not able to pass a fundraiser goal. But
Also, by the way, I'm getting some feedback from various viewers, and they're saying that they believe it might be a phone issue, perhaps maybe even an iPhone issue specifically. But I've seen several people say that if you get on a laptop or a desktop or some sort of computer, not a mobile phone, that the donation will go through. So it might be a problem with YouTube's mobile application. That could be where the problems are arising from, but certainly there is an issue of some sort going on. Because I've seen loads of people saying that tonight and letting me know that they can't even attempt to donate for whatever reason.
And that is unfortunate to hear, but hopefully we can somehow find a way to get over that $3,000 goal. I know one thing, the Lee Spring Army has never missed a fundraiser goal in the history of the channel. And I hope that we can see tonight that tonight is not the first night that the Lee Spring Army misses a fundraiser goal and falls slightly short. Hopefully we can find a way to get to that fundraiser goal. I don't really know how, because if half of everyone can't even donate, because they usually donate over the phone, and the phone, specifically iPhones, aren't accepting the donations that go through YouTube anymore, either due to the mobile platform or some kind of an iPhone operating issue, that is going to be very concerning. But nevertheless, hopefully we can still do it. Put an LSA in the chat if you believe that the Lee Spring Army can make it to the $3,000 goal, because I believe that we will be able to, with time, of course. But moving on from that and out of the Free Russian Army area and also the poll, it's time for us to move on into our location unknowns, showing our first clip where we got to see a rolling propaganda machine. I've never seen a BRDM2 mounted with megaphones, but we got to see one today, and it was pretty wild to see. So here's the clip. We got a creeper right there.
Whose vehicle is this?
I believe it's Belarusian. They blurred out the vehicle identifying marks, so sadly we can't really tell. Oh my god!
Dang!
Dang!
Alro's just doing 1,000.
Oh
Jeez,
my
that's
lord,
the
we
biggest
just
one
hit
of
the
night.
goal! We just hit the goal! Let's go!
Go!
Hey! Oh my god! Hal Rose is a legend of the channel, throwing in a $999 donation to Razom For Ukraine. There we have
That's
it.
crazy.
We do not have to worry. We do not have to worry. The Leaf Spring Army did it again. They blew through another whopping fundraiser goal and have once again been able to secure the title of the Leaf Spring Army never missing a fundraiser goal in its history. That is absolutely incredible. And I got to thank you so much for doing that, Hal Rose. And I got to thank everyone who's donated to the fundraiser tonight, because I was actually getting concerned and a little bit stressed that we would not pass the fundraiser goal tonight. And I got to say this really quickly. Whether we pass the fundraiser goal or not, it doesn't really matter, because the support's still going to Ukraine and it still counts. But just on a matter of pride for the channel, it was starting to concern me. I always get concerned when it looks like we're hardly going to pass a fundraiser goal, because I'm always like, man, is this going to be like one of the last times that we pass a fundraiser goal? But we did it again tonight. And I got to give a huge shout out to Hal Rose, who combined tonight, I believe, has put in nearly $1,100 or more into the fundraiser, because you're massively helping out these fundraisers to keep doing what they do and to keep on helping out inside of Ukraine. So I'm sorry to interrupt the clip there, everyone, but Hal Rose's donation to the fundraiser was so big, I had to point it out and give some thanks for it. And so with that, we are back to the video.
Well, real quick before you start this video back up, what is the purpose behind this vehicle? Because they have like some like haunting sounding music playing behind whatever they're shouting over the loudspeaker, and it's like they're driving through a desolate area with only like 5 houses in it. So what's the point?
I don't know. I really don't know. But it is stupid. I think we can all agree and admit to that. It is really stupid to look at.
Let's show.
All right. Well, with that, let's get back to the video.
Yeah.
Сдавайтесь сегодня, чтобы избежать лишних потерь завтра. Пусть ваше решение станет залогом мира и безопасности для всех наших граждан. Помните, что власть в стране должна быть основана на законности и демократических принципах. И только разрешение конфликта может обеспечить нашему народу стабильность и процветание.
Honestly, I'd probably laugh at this thing if I saw it driving down the road. I'd be like, what the hell is this? Like going down the road playing like movie music and talking over it.
I have no idea. Like, this thing is just stupid. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but I had to show to y'all just because we had to do it. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Russian FPV drone trying to hit a Ukrainian helicopter while it was in flight. And so here's the clip. Look at the drone. It's trying to chase down the helicopter. Well, you see the cameraman looking back trying to find the drone, and they lost it now, so we don't know where it is. But there for a good second, it looked like the drone was actually going to be catching up. So, let's watch that again. There's the drone, and it's coming in hot. The rockets are fired, and then it just disappears. We don't know where the drone went. It didn't hit the helicopter, but that is the end of that clip. But before we move on to the next one, I want to make sure to throw up a really special documentary that was made today by United 24 talking about all the different artillery systems that have been provided by the West. The Caesar, the HIMARS, the Panzer Helmets 2000, the Archer, the M777, the M109-6A Paladin, and the M109L. All of them. They are all absolutely incredible artillery pieces. And United 24 was able to make a really good video today talking about what these artillery pieces have done for Ukraine. And so, without further ado, here is the video.
Hard to overestimate the importance of artillery in modern warfare. Artillery has excellent firepower and can inflict massive damage on the enemy. It can be used to destroy military equipment and manpower, destroy defense structures, and disturb the enemy's logistical operations far behind the front line. Since the beginning of the full-scale war, the Western Allies have transferred a lot of modern and effective artillery to Ukraine. Check out some of them in the video.
We are about to witness a Ukrainian artillery unit using a French-made self-propelled artillery system Caesar. This is a very rare and exclusive footage because the Ukrainian side is trying to keep the guys' work secret due to the high interest of the Russian forces.
This sophisticated artillery system is quite easy to handle. The unit arrives at the position, enters coordinates, fires the gun, and changes positions before the Russians strike back. The men receive coordinates from air reconnaissance. A Polish-made Fly Eye spots a Russian Tunguska designed for shooting down low-flying aircraft, helicopters and UAVs. They track it and pass the coordinates to the men on the ground as soon as it stops moving. The French Caesar does the rest.
All in all, it took 2 minutes to arrive in the position, load the gun, shoot it, and then load it back. Very fast and very efficient.
It's Caesar. Well, it's highly maneuverable and can shoot far, which is important. You can repair it easily too. We use it a lot, so it's good that we can repair and keep it up ourselves.
To provide the artillery with new targets every day, the Fly Eye unit soars high over the enemy's territories. However, it's not an easy job, as Russians use their signal intercepting systems, known to be extremely hard to avoid.
But what helps Ukraine withstand against prevailing Russian forces is new generation of more fast and precise weapons like what you have behind me, the mighty Panzerhaubitze 2000. In the summer of 22, soldiers of the 43rd Brigade underwent 40 days of training in Germany. The intention was to help them switch from Soviet peonies to modern self-propelled howitzers, the Panzerhaubitze.
It's easy. After working on Soviet machinery, this is like driving a Mercedes. After Zhiguli, I got into
Because it's like driving a Mercedes. Because it's made by the same people. Schultz! Schultz, blood!
Mercedes.
Alexei is a howitzer commander. As an artillery enthusiast, it was a dream of his to simply just see the Panzerhaubitzes somewhere in a museum. But he certainly never imagined that he'd be working with one a whole year into the full-scale invasion.
The first time I fired it in Germany at the training field, it was like sex. I was like, man, I fired a PZ-2000. I couldn't have dreamed of that. For me, it was something unbelievable.
Panzerhaubitze is superior over its counterparts in many ways. With heavy modern armor and isolated ammunition storage, it provides safety and confidence to its operators. Alexei says that they can spend days in the armored vehicle in combat positions. This howitzer can perform any artillery task that exists today. Its automated systems of ammo feeding and GPS targeting allows it to work at least 10 times faster compared to the Peony. Because of that, here in the Bakhmut direction, the Panzerhaubitze mainly works with counter-artillery fire.
Man, it's just impressive to watch those things in operation. I mean, it's such a huge artillery piece mounted into such a massive SPG. If y'all have never seen the scale of a Panzerhaubitze 2000, it is the size of like 4 F-150s put together. And if y'all haven't seen a Ford F-150 recently, y'all are in for a treat. Let me go really quickly pull up Ford F-150.
Have you ever wanted to get a Ford F-150? Well, you're in luck.
So, let's see here. So this is something that is really interesting here for a quick moment. And I'm trying to find this to show it. Sadly, it doesn't look like... Oh, yeah, here we go. Here we go. Finally. Thank God. Okay. So, this is the size of a Ford F-150 up here at the top versus an M4 Sherman from World War II. You may notice that...
It's actually not that large, really.
What?
It's actually not that large, really, the tank.
What the hell do you mean? Like, dude, the Sherman was a big tank for World War II. I mean, this thing was huge compared to most others. Like, at least in the vertical clearance and also in length, it was a big tank. And nowadays, trucks like the Ford F-150 end up pretty much being the exact same size as a M4 Sherman. I mean, a pickup truck is huge. But what's even crazier is that the Panzerhaubitze 2000 makes those look even smaller. So let me see really quickly if I can find y'all a picture of someone standing by one of these things. Let's see here. Trying to look for one. Here we go. So, for scale, we'll take this. I don't know what the hell this is, but you can see someone walking. You can see someone.
It's a riot.
It's a riot, apparently. But beyond that, you can see someone running by the F-150. You can see the height comparison here. And then you can see a Frenchman riding by on a bicycle near a free French M4 Sherman in front of the Arc de Triomphe here in Paris. And notice how tall they both are by the F-150 and by the M4 Sherman. Now, here is the size of the Panzerhaubitze 2000 with someone standing right next to it. It is the height of two M4 Sherman, well, not really two M4 Shermans put together. It is about the height of a Ford F-150 and maybe 3/4. So it is incredibly huge. I mean, these things are massive as far as I can see. But nevertheless, you can see here the Panzerhaubitze 2000 and the absolute size of these things. And the fact that they're able to fire so rapidly, and not only that, be easily maintained for the most part, is a complete feat of engineering for the most part. But
go back to the riot pic real quick. Let's see. It's on our Reddit subreddit F Cars, and they bring up a picture of Sherman to compare it with the F-150 in the middle of a riot. It's like chasing after the dude. It's like, that's so random. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, it's just like, I saw the picture. I was like, should I use it? I was like, eh. And I was like, that's really the only one that compares them well enough. So I was like, I guess I have to use it. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from this. I really do want an M4 Sherman, though. That would be cool to have one day. But we're going to be moving on from the size comparisons here, just so that we all know how big the Panzerhaubitze 2000 really is. But now we're back to the video.
At the moment they all hit the target, I'm already gone.
Despite its many advantages, the highly complicated systems of Panzerhaubitze do need a lot of maintenance. They were never tested in such rough conditions, shooting from 60 to 100 rounds a day. Still, such weapons prove to be a great advantage over Russia's Soviet tactics. They are being put to good use by the 43rd Artillery Brigade of great power, which continues to liberate Ukrainian land, meter by meter.
Мы будем занимать многомиллионными армиями фронты протяжностью сотни.
We will occupy fronts stretching hundreds of thousands of kilometers, with armies of millions. This is the concept that the Russians still have. They want to flatten everything inside with huge hordes. On the other hand, we are accurately destroying their artillery and manpower.
Behind me is the Archer, the most automated self-propelled howitzer there is. It is one of 8 Archer systems delivered to Ukraine by Sweden, and it has finally arrived for the first real battle test in the harsh conditions of eastern Ukraine. Let's see what the crew has to say about it.
I believe this thing has a crew of 3.
Before our training trip, my friend told me this was the best thing in artillery that was ever invented. And now I realize he was right. This is a very technologically advanced machine. It may very well be ahead of its time.
Oh, it's the Volvo dump truck.
Yeah. And they got that dump truck.
We can rely on Yuri's words. Just like his crewmates, Yuri has been an artilleryman since the start of the full-scale war, giving him 2 years of active combat experience. Most of this time Yuri spent fighting as a gunner of a D-20, a Soviet-taught howitzer produced since the 50s. It features zero automation. It's literally the hammer of the artillery world, and in that sense the Archer is a complete opposite.
It is very maneuverable. The deployment time is 30 seconds. This is the best indicator among self-propelled artillery systems. I believe that the Archer is a sniper howitzer.
So hang on, y'all. I gotta ask, what the hell is up with the warning symbol here in the top right? Like, this is just a guy in depression. Like, there's nothing really that's coming out of this to me that's a warning. It's just hot dog man up on a warning label. Like, it's like, what the hell's the point of that? Like, really? But and also
the warning is, if you don't make your shot and you miss your target, it's how you end up looking, just like that.
Yeah. Aw, man. And then down here, you got a hot dog man after he gets a line of Coke swinging off the side of the SPG. Like, I don't know what the warning signs are. Like, what are these? Like, what are they supposed to be warning me of? What is this even? But anyways, we're going to get back to the clip because I just had to point out the warning labels because I was really confused about what these mean. But nevertheless, back to the clip.
It's straight on target. Not aiming in squares, but directly into it. Literally in 1 to 2 shots.
А саме на ураження, буквально 1-2 постріли.
Oh, that is nice.
In a way, switching to the Archer for this crew was like learning a new language. One of the requirements for an Archer's gunner position is an office classic. moderate computer skills. But it's not just the crew who had to go through a 2-month express course. Out of around 100 soldiers, 70 were engineers who had to be prepared to maintain these complex systems. Yuri's favorite feature is the automation. The crew doesn't have to leave the armored cabin when on a mission at all.
Isn't that
Theoretically,
nice?
it could be operated by just one person. That, as well as the 30-kilometer range with a standard shell, makes it...
So interestingly enough, y'all, something that the Ukrainian narrator here on United 24 just brought up, which is a very interesting point about a lot of Swedish weapon systems, is that the Archer can be operated by a singular person. The driver can actually stop driving, of course he'll have to, and then just go back into the gunner's compartment right behind the cab and just start operating the gun on his own. This could be a one-man operation right here. Although they do have, I believe, 2 or 3 crew members inside of the Archer normally. This is a very common practice within the Swedish defense industry whenever they produce anything of their own, is trying to cut down the amount of people needed to operate on something down to the bare minimum, to automate things so much, or to at least make things so simple, you just hardly need anyone to do anything. And I'm actually going to bring y'all to something that was really the absolute epitome of this idea, and this was really one of the first times that we saw the Swedes really do this in full form for a ground vehicle, and it's with this thing. And y'all aren't going to even know what this is, most of y'all, but some of y'all will, and I'll be very proud if y'all do. This is the Stridsvagn 103. This is also known colloquially as the Wedge. We're actually going to be scrolling up a little bit, though, because I didn't realize that some of the pictures further down are apparently some art that people made because they like the Stridsvagn a little too much. But beyond that, this thing is called the door wedge, and what is really interesting about the Stridsvagn 103 is that it is a 3-man crewed main battle tank. This is technically a main battle tank according to the Swedes, and what was really bizarre about this is that the Stridsvagn 103 was actually designed to be operated by a single crewman. So this entire main battle tank is pretty much a one-man crew operation. But they found out that that would be way too stressful for a single crew member to operate, especially if anything broke down in the field and battlefield repairs had to be conducted. So instead of doing that, they added another 2 crew members just so that way they could, you know, try and make sure that this guy didn't get too stressed out running the tank. So this was really one of the first times that we saw the Swedes hit on that one crew member philosophy, but ended up just throwing in a couple of extra crew members to make sure it wasn't all too stressful. And the Archer is, once again, one of those continuations of a very interesting Swedish philosophy, which is to cut down on the amount of needed manpower on a single vehicle or to maintain a single vehicle at any given moment. But getting back to the clip.
Man, it'll be super nice whenever people start developing vehicles that are totally autonomous, like they can send them out into the battlefield, and just like you operate like the RQ-9 Reaper from a pod way back on the actual runway itself, you could do that with these vehicles as well. That'll be super cool. So that way nobody has to go out in the field at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be crazy to see that one day. But this artillery system right now is truly the peak of artillery performance in the modern day and age. And while the Panzerhaubitze 2000 is this massive-looking self-propelled gun that is tracked, in reality, the Caesar SPG as well as the Archer SPGs are actually leaps and bounds ahead of the Panzerhaubitze 2000 in what matters the most for artillery in the modern day. Armor is a complete non-issue. No armor is needed for a modern SPG. What is needed is the ability to travel from place to place as quick as physically possible, and to also be able to to set up the gun, fire the rounds, and then pack up and leave in the quickest amount of time. And the Archer SPG is the best in these categories by any SPG out there so far. But getting back to the video,
art system.
Ukraine relies heavily on modern howitzers like M37s to suppress the enemy and provide cover for its own troops.
So today we are working with the 45th Brigade. This is the artillery unit who are working with the M37s. They are covering the infantry units.
Oh, that was nice.
We're advancing in the direction of Klishkiivka, the nearest village to the Bakhmut.
200 to 250. That's a whole day of work. If you maintain the gun, it does not fail. Each howitzer has fired tens of thousands of rounds. 107s, fragmentation, or you can switch to high explosive. We use them for infantry.
Після того, як ти отримуєш координати, що тобі треба зробити, щоб підготуватись до пострілу?
We enter the angle to understand how high to raise the barrel. We have a bubble meter that we use to set the level, and we have an angle meter. We enter the angle, and through the sight, we aim at the collimator and rotate the gun accordingly.
Despite its precision and great range, the M37 is quite a large towed howitzer, which makes it easy to spot by Russian drones.
Russian airborne assault troops are stationed over there, and they are quite well trained. If they open fire on us, it is with large caliber systems, or MLRS. We use them to protect the gun from Russian suicide drones. It's quite effective. Some guns were not damaged at all, some had minimal damage.
The first howitzers to arrive in Ukraine were used to liberate the Kharkiv and Kherson regions. They also played an important role in the Vuhledar direction, where Russia tried to advance with large forces this winter, but suffered significant losses.
As we can see, it's vital for the crew to...
I heard
fight
you
the gun
tiny chuckle,
directly
Matthew.
after the
I heard you go,
fire.
oh.
I was muted.
I was trying so hard not to laugh at your chuckle, man. I was like, damn it.
Within the seconds.
Behind me you have the M109A6 Paladin howitzer, and the crew of this cannon now uses the cluster munition provided by the United States. So we went out to find out how it affects the battlefield.
The Paladin was a really cool one. I like it.
Had a little alarm going off.
The M109 Paladin is the US Army's primary tool of indirect fire support. With standard shells, it's already a powerful weapon. So why does Ukraine need cluster munition? The answer is simple: it's effective. The enemy horde is just too big. Clusters are the best way to target an area with no need to hit each and every infantryman.
Let's imagine a scenario. The drone detects, for example, some kind of armored personnel carrier moving along the tree line. While they are still driving, we are already rolling out the howitzer and charging it. As soon as they stop somewhere and the enemy infantry rushes from the vehicle with guns and ammunition, we shoot at them.
That's a really smart strategy right there.
Our cluster munitions are used for their intended purpose. They are used in areas where it is confirmed that there are no civilians, that there is only either military equipment or military personnel. We report on all the shells used, which means each step is recorded.
This Paladin now defends the road between the recently liberated village of Robotene and Tokmak, a strategically important town on the road to Crimea. The crew is shooting from 50 to a stunning 100 rounds per day. When the infantry needs help, there's no room for economy. And cluster munition is an effective way to achieve the goal of all Ukrainians: move forward and liberate what is rightfully ours.
So the beast behind my back is the world's most popular self-propelled howitzer, M109. This one is the Italian-made version, which Italy kindly presented to Ukraine. The sole
Quick explanation, they're showing you two different Paladins, the M109A6 and the M109L. The M109-6 is the more modernized version of the Paladin. The M109L is an older version, but it's far more common. That's pretty much what she's trying to say, just to, you know, put that out there in a better way, because she's like, it's the Italian version. It's actually just the older version, because America also has M109s, much like this one, but those were retired out of service because we either upgraded all of them, or we just pushed them out of service because they were too old.
Soldiers jokingly call it the grandmother of the Paladin.
While the commander waits for coordinates, the crew prepares. They're winding the detonators to the shells and aiming the howitzer at the surroundings via the dip compass. This model doesn't have a built-in GPS system, so the precision of targeting depends solely on the dip compass operator's skills.
Man, the dip compass operator, he's got a can of Copenhagen out there.
Compass. My great-grandfathers used to work with it. The shot is fired from here. This is the device that we use for aiming. We choose how we work depending on the target. Either we orient against the dip compass, or we simply choose the direction of the target. And only then, at the command of the officer, we load, aim, check, and fire.
Immediately after the shot has been fired, the soldiers rush to mask the howitzer. They know within moments Russia will strike back. They also know that without the artillery fire, the infantry has no chance of breaking through Russian fortified defense lines. In these critical moments, there is no room for fear or fatigue.
Just a second ago, there was another incoming hit. Probably we should be going now.
Hey, they're whipping it.
It's M142 HIMARS.
Yeah!
Let's see how their work has changed after a year and a half of full-scale war.
I've been on HIMARS from the very beginning, since May 22. What has changed? This is war, and we take into account the enemy's tactics and how the enemy adapts. Right now, we simply cannot reach them, which means we need more long-range missiles. What kind of missiles? ATACMS. That's it.
Ukraine has been requesting more ATACMS systems that extend the reach of HIMARS up to 300 kilometers for a while now. A limited amount with the 165 kilometers range provided by the US proved its worth, hitting a military airfield in temporarily occupied Berdyansk with the first shot. But the reason Russia has moved its logistical and command centers over 70 kilometers from the frontline are GMLRS, which are currently deployed on these HIMARS. They made a great contribution to the Kharkiv and Kherson counteroffensives in 2022 and have remained the most effective weapons on the battlefield since. Just imagine what their target hit rate might be.
We only count the missiles we have launched. As of now, we have fired more than 3,000. We know that there will always be a result because we work with precision.
3,000 missiles, and yet most of the time they are
Dang,
on the
dude,
move
did you
and not
see that?
Wait, let's see it again.
Look at this, dude. This guy was whipping it. Here it comes in a second.
3,000 missiles,
My
and
God.
yet most of the time they are on the move and not shooting. The Ukrainian frontline is larger than these systems can cover, so their task is to be prepared to work anytime, anywhere. Now, what qualifies as a worthy target for HIMARS? As mentioned, it could range from an airfield to a dugout with a machine gun that poses a threat to the infantry. It's crucial to note that the target must be confirmed by at least two of the following: from the ground, sky, or satellite reconnaissance. The enemy is always hunting for these systems, both on the frontline and within Ukrainian-controlled territories. Generally, no pictures or videos of the systems are allowed. HIMARS units move in secrecy, and a separate unit is assigned to guard them. Indeed, despite being too few, these systems have already become an integral part of Ukrainian artillery. While serving as a tool of destruction, they are also a symbol of support. But most importantly, one GMLRS keeps the spirits of Ukrainian infantry high all week.
The biggest gratitude comes from our brothers in arms. The army is vast, but everyone communicates and has friends and relatives in the military. The best thing is when you get a call that says, "Guys, you've done a great job. Thank you."
High-precision ammunition is necessary for the effective operation of artillery units. This allows the armed forces of Ukraine to achieve conditional parity with the enemy's quantitatively large artillery. We hope that soon, ammunition, such as ATACMS with a range of up to 300 kilometers, will help our soldiers to drive out the enemy from the lands.
And with that, that's the end of the video from United 24, a very interesting little documentary about all of the Western artillery systems that have been provided and what they've been doing to help out Ukraine on those front lines. But moving on from that, it's time for us to get into the casualty report, the Russian loss report. And oh
dear. 9 Bobcats in one day. Is this too good to be true, or is it Easter Sunday?
It's Easter Sunday! Hey! And it's great to see 9 Bobcat skid steers being destroyed. On top of that, 650 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 20 armored personnel carriers, 47 supply trucks, 15 main battle tanks, 44 artillery systems, 30 drones, 2 cruise missiles, and 7 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Overall, it has been very nice to see, and wonderful to know that they have been able to inflict such high losses on Russian forces over just the past day. And that moves us on into our next bit of news out there on the front lines. But before we do, we have been hearing that that from officials from the Baltic states are warning that the Russians are planning a quick pivot to invade the Baltics. What are y'all thinking? Matthew, what are you thinking?
All right, so we asked everybody in the audience. We said, what are your thoughts about officials from the Baltic states warning Russia is planning a quote-unquote quick pivot to invade the Baltics? And I guess Russia's going to quick pivot from one failure to another one. 40% said it sounds like Russia will likely do it. 28% said it sounds like precautionary talk. 23% said it's just fear-mongering. Chill out, man. And 9% said unsure. And on this one, I gotta say, it sounds like precautionary speak. I don't think Russia is really prepared to do any pivoting of any sort to really attack the Baltics right now. They might maybe later on down the road out of desperation, or maybe because they try to do something else just to be wild, maybe down the road, but not right this moment. They're struggling in Ukraine, and they really can't move on from there just yet. But that doesn't mean they can't simply lob a missile or something over there. It simply means they can't launch a ground invasion in that area, which is what's needed really to attack the Baltics in a pretty big way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my honest opinion, I would have to say that the Russians are most likely not going to do that. That's most likely a precautionary speech. Oh my lord!
Herd of Corgis just came in and made the whole donation. Good lord, you see this?
Oh my lord! $1,000 donation from Herd of Corgis, beating out Hal Rose's donation by $1. But overall, Hal Rose still holds the title of being the largest donor to the fundraiser tonight. But that is still huge right there, and a huge shout out to Herd of Corgis for being an absolute legend of the fundraiser tonight. Thank you for that. And thank you for helping out Ukraine through Razom For Ukraine. And hopefully, we'll be in their newsletters soon. They said they're still working on it, so hopefully we'll be able to be in there soon and get a show to all of y'all. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And I would have to say that the Russians are most likely just doing that precautionary talk. But Matthew, what were you saying right before we got so pleasantly surprised by Herd of Corgi's massive donation?
I was just saying it sounds like precautionary speak from the Baltic states, because they're the ones basically saying to prepare because they think Russia is planning a quick pivot. And I was saying that Russia is not prepared to pivot whatsoever. And I think the Baltics are simply ramping up their preparations in case Russia is planning to do something like that in actuality, just like Poland's doing. I think the Baltics are sort of getting on board with that same mentality.
I think so. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the front lines near Veliki Vislok, where we got to see a T-72 EA, like EA Sports is in the name, that is in operation with the 128th Separate Mountain Assault Transcarthian Brigade of the Ukrainian Army. We can see it right here. Right there. And we can see right there it says Vaclav. Like baklava, but better. But that's the end of that little picture right there. Very nice to see. And we're now going to be moving down the front lines and into the area of Svatove, where we got to see that the Ukrainians were taking out the trenches, or more so, taking out the trash, with the country music playing in the background. Wabui! Oh my goodness! And we can see the outpost getting hit over and over and over. And that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and a little bit farther on down the lines, past the Bakhmut area and the Kremenna Forest, as we got no news or footage from those areas of the front line. And we're now going to be moving on into the city of Avdiivka, into the area of Stepove, where we got to see 2 BMPs being destroyed in rapid succession. Here is the clip. You see the first BMP get blown up right there. And we're about to see the second BMP get blown up right about there too. And there it goes. 2 BMPs knocked out in a mere 10 seconds. That's a pretty good record right there, and I gotta say that it's very nice. Of course, really quickly, I do have to say this though. Some of y'all may be realizing I'm a little low energy tonight. I gotta be honest with y'all, I'm not really feeling that hot. I got a bit of a headache. I had to take some headache meds, and that's actually why the 924 video was played, so that way I could have some downtime there at the beginning to be able to go get some headache medicine. And also, for some reason, my stomach ain't feeling that hot.
Oh, dear. Goodness gracious, man. They put that mind ripper on you, and now they've messed you up. I guess they came around with the machine.
Man, they said, you better not talk about the Havana syndrome. And I said, I will. And then they said, not with my mind sifter you want. And so and so they got me, dagnabbit. But moving on from that, we can see a BMP-3 also detonating in the Avdiivka area as well. Okay, so really quickly, we got to go back to watch the drone clip. So there it is, hitting the BMP-3. Kabooey, and there goes the BMP-3. That thing is gone. Done for, even. Shattered to pieces, they say. Boom! Bada boom, jaga jaga blit! But moving on from that and into our next clip, into the area of Severny, we also get to see that an entire armored push was destroyed today. Out of the 40 armored vehicles that were in this group, 20 of them, I believe it was a little over 20, were destroyed today in this failed attack. And so, always happy to see that. And we also got a breakdown here of their exact coordinates on the map and what kind of vehicles they might be. And we can see there's a lot of vehicles, a great deal of them that never made it back off the front lines, and the attack failed, meaning that the Ukrainians are still holding the area, and the Russians can cry and cope. Meanwhile, we got to see a French gyat in the back line in support of the 3rd Brigade. Man, look at this gyat. Just a look at this. It's literally called a gyat. You know, like the meme.
Caked up.
Man, a gyat from Ohio. But this one isn't from Ohio. This was actually from France. A gyat from Lyon. You know what I mean? But we can see it right here firing a shell. It's a 155mm main gun being operated by the Azov 3rd Brigade. Great to see it in use, and great to see all the pictures they have of this unit. Moving on from that, and out of the Avdiivka battlefield, it's time for us to move on down into the direction of Novomykolaivka, where we got to see the Ukrainians using a javelin, Saint Javelin, to hit a Russian tank. Here's the clip. When you see him point out the vehicle. Boom! And there goes the javelin.
Made in Troy, Alabama. And also look at that logo down there with that eagle with that neck.
Squaw! Dude, that actually looks pretty American.
It does, really.
Yeah! Ooh!
Oh, yes, blят.
Saint Javelin wins again, and the boys down in Troy are getting a raise. That's great to see that they were able to hit that tank way out there. We don't even know what kind of a tank it was. We just know that it's now no longer a tank. Moving on from that into our next clip near Novomykolaivka, we also got to see some Ukrainian drone operators hitting and knocking out a Russian MTLB in the area. While the Irish pub music plays that you hear whenever they show a pint of Guinness on an ad. And so we can see here the MTLB stuck in the trench. We can see the drone sticking itself in the back of the MTLB. That sounded very bad. But we can see the MTLB now burning, and oh my goodness. Feeling a little warm, are we? It's always good to stay warm in these cold Ukrainian winters. And we see the next FPV drone coming in and flushing the rest of them out. A very effective mission, if I say so myself. Ooh, a toasty. With that, that's the end of the clip, but I think y'all got the picture of what happened in Novomykolaivka today. No advances, only losses. Moving on from that and into the area around Robotny, we also got to see a Challenger 2 on the move. This is part of the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, and look at it go. Beautiful tank. Wonderful
nice
sound.
Exhaust, man. Nice V8 sound like a Mustang.
Believe it or not, it's a V12.
Oh, a V12 sound like a Lambo.
Man, ain't it nice? If only. If only. But moving on from that, we also got to hear that the Russians are planning on building a brand new railroad through the southern land corridor in Ukraine. We can see that right there. It's planning on cutting down the distance and also making sure that Russia's supply lines are more insulated from Ukrainian attacks and that they're not relying on the Kerch Bridge to get all of their supplies into the far eastern side of Ukraine. That's currently posed a lot of issues for the Russians because the bridge has been hit and knocked out multiple times, pretty much cutting off the entire eastern area of the Russian-occupied area from any kind of supply. So it looks like they're going to try and fix that with this brand new rail corridor. Meanwhile, we also got to see that within the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast that defenses were being made. We got to see some pictures of these today. Notice this trench. Notice this trench. Notice this one. And this one. And more trenches.
Those are nicely dug.
We also got to see what appears to be a tank trench in this area. We can also see concrete barricades, more concrete barricades, bunker doors. We can see dragon's teeth being laid out. And most importantly, we can see them in a nice little row. Overall, not that bad. Not bad at all. And it looks like they're working on making sure that their defenses are well prepared, even way behind the front lines. Moving on from that and down into the Krunky area within the left bank of the Dnipro River, we also got to see that near Tavrisk, a guard tower got hit. The Ukrainians hit this guard tower because it looked a little sus, and they were dead on the nail by saying that it was looking a little suspicious. We can see them here now bringing in the drone that's going to take it on out. Man, some of these bots are vicious tonight. Oh, slow.
Yeah, the bot came in tonight and it said, "You sound like you're good," sitting there mouthing off. "How would you get your mouth to the front line and see how your mouth is done?" So I said in response, I said, "I didn't like your mouth." And I put in the gasping sign. I said, "Oh!"
Well, I'll say this. I don't have much to say to bots, but I will say that while Kim Paolo may not like my mouth, his mother sure did. Moving on from that and down into the area of Ola Prostan, we did also get to see that heavy drones were being used in this area to knock out Russian positions. I don't know what the hell this guy in the bottom right corner was put into the video for, but he's here, so we just got to work with that. But we can see them flying the drone out to Ola Prostan. That's Kim Powell right there, Ashley Matthew.
Who's that? Oh, that's the bot?
You just said who's that? We just got done panning him. But yeah.
I don't memorize their name.
Man, I gotta make jokes out of the bots every once in a while, like Chris's mom. You know, very common joke. But we can see the drone coming on in. And, ooh, hitting dead onto that Russian position.
I can't help but look at this fella in the corner of the video.
Know, it's
like
so
the whole
distracting.
Time it's playing. I just can't help it. I keep looking down like, what do you want? What?
Dude, this is the...
Oh, whoa. There's a foul in the chat. There's a foul. I call foul. Historic Tasmanian said, I thought it was Matt. No. That's foul now. I'm not going to take that.
Oh, no. Ban him. No. Ban him. He's out. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Oh, we're just kidding. We're not banning Historic Tasmanian, by the way. But, oh my lord. That's crazy. I said, I feel like the headset guy is staring into my soul. He really is. Just look, he winked. Sick bastard. But anyway, since he into the clip, and still interesting to see, great to know the Ukrainians were knocking out Russian forces in Ola Prostan. Moving on from that and on into the area of Odessa, sadly, the city went into a blackout as I believe the power facility was hit inside of the area, and it just pretty much knocked out the entire city's power grid within this region. But with that, that's the end of the clip right there, and very unfortunate to hear and very unfortunate to see. But with that, it is time for us to move north into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 767 of the war. And so, here is the speech. It's more so not of a speech, it's more so of a commemoration of the 2-year anniversary of the northern region of Ukraine being liberated from Russian forces. And so, here is the clip.
Дорогі українці, українки.
Let me make sure that we get the subtitles up first. Sorry, everyone. It appears that they are not automatically on the video. So let me make sure to get our English subtitles right here. And let me start from the beginning, and here we go.
Дорогі українці, українки, усі, хто з Україною. 2 роки тому весь світ побачив справжній сенс нашої битви тут, в Україні. Побачили всі, для кого це тоді було, на жаль, просто ще однією війною. Побачили, що це за війна, що Україна в ній захищає не лише свій державний кордон та суверенітет. Для нас це війна на захист України і усього, що робить людей людьми. Саме тому у цієї війни глобальне значення. Це війна за право на існування для нашої держави та водночас за право на життя для кожної людини. За гідність для нашого народу і для кожного народу, який прагне своєї долі. Це війна за те, щоб ніхто не смів ставати звіром по відношенню до інших. Коли наші воїни вигнали Росію з Бучі, з Ірпеня, з Бородянки, з усієї Київщини, а потім із Сумщини, з Чернігівщини, кожен зміг побачити, що це перемоги не лише української сміливості та зброї, але й людської моралі. Українці почали тоді повертати нормальне життя всюди, куди Росія принесла загибель та знущання, мародерства, садизм. І убиті окупантами наші люди, чиї тіла лежали на вулицях Бучі, були свідченням, що нікому у світі не можна залишатись осторонь цієї битви. Бо саме тут, в Україні, захищаючи наших людей, захищаючи наше життя, нашу державу, людяність перемагає. Щоб розпочинати такі агресії проти інших, Росія спочатку знищила в собі мораль та зробила насильство і ненависть своєю ідеологією. Такі системи не зупиняються просто так. Сила їх зупиняє, єдність їх зупиняє, рішучість та розуміння, що саме вони хочуть знищити. Я пишаюся кожним і кожною, хто присвячує своє життя тому, щоб життя всієї нашої України збереглося. І дякую усім в світі, хто нам дійсно допомагає. І хай увесь світ ніколи не забуває, якою ціною дається ця битва і яке зло ми зупиняємо тут, на землі нашій. І я прошу вшанувати зараз хвилиною мовчання пам'ять усіх наших людей, чиї життя були забрані окупантами Росії. Дякую. Слава нашому міцному народу, воїнам нашим, слава усім, хто захищає людяність та життя. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Героям слава! And with that, that is the end of the address from President Volodymyr Zelensky today, as Ukraine is ready to celebrate tomorrow, April 1st, the day that Russian forces withdrew from the northern area of the Ukrainian state, and therefore the Ukrainians were able to declare their first victory in a major campaign in the war. But with that, we have reached the end of tonight's news, and we are actually going to be moving on into the question segment. We're going to be addressing any of the remaining polls that we've ended up running with all of y'all to ask y'all some of the top questions of the night. And also, we're going to be addressing some live chat questions as well, and also recognizing all of the top donors of the stream so far tonight. Really quickly, though, I do have to let y'all know in advance that we will be ending this stream at the top of the hour tonight because I'm not feeling that hot. But I want to make sure that we are still able to address some of y'all's questions and recognize the top donors, and also talk about some of the top questions that we've been speaking of in the live chat tonight. And so, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so we do have one last poll question to address. And the poll says, Ukraine reveals that over 1,000 kilometers of fortifications have been built around the city of Kyiv. And the question to the audience is this necessary? 64% said yes, the Kyiv is at risk of invasion. 25% said, I guess it's a good precaution, I assume. And it looks like 6% said, no, Kyiv won't be invaded again. And 5% said unsure. And on this one, I would say it is a good precaution. However, I'm pretty confident that it won't have to be actually tested because I think the Ukrainian armed forces will hold off the Russians before they actually get to Kyiv in a large-scale invasion. But that's just me. So me personally, I would go with the 25%. But Enforcer, where do you stand on this poll?
I would have to say that Kyiv is always at a risk of invasion if precautions are not taken, and so the production and creation of defenses within the northern region of Ukraine is a strategic necessity in defending the capital of the country and ensuring that the Russians find that the southeastern area continues to be their most advantageous route because it is once again a absolute death pit in the area and territorially a disadvantageous place to fight over for the Russian Federation at the moment. So making sure that Kyiv is heavily defended to make it a non-viable attack path is a very suitable option. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And we are on to the top donors of the night. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and we have a hell of a list of top donors tonight. And up first, we have two $1,000 donations, the biggest ones of the night. The first went to Hal Rose, and the second went to Herd of Corgis. And huge shout out to Hal and Herd of Corgis very much for that very generous support to Razom and helping to save lives in Ukraine. And we also see a $150 from Say What, as well as DCC Prime 1, very generous as well, and thank you both. We have a 100 then from Hal Rose, some guy called the Enforcer. Then we have 100 from Bob Y, Just Chillin', Tina. Greg Carrier put in a 50, along with Gene Kustra, who also put in a 50, along with Thorin Underhill, William Cullison, Plant Lady, Zoan Tran, Mike Smith, Old Warrior, Aquatic Borealis, Bob Y once again. Then we got one from GTO Joe 04. We got a 50 from J.E. Button, as well as Ted Mitchell, Cliff Age, Panama Floyd, Evere Anthony, Matt Shear, Skip Tracer 007, Axel K, Don Edwards, Skip Tracer 007 once again. And then we have our last 50 from Ben. And huge shout out to everybody tonight, not just the top donors, but especially the top donors for throwing in such a large amount, but every single donation adds up, and we're now up to almost $6,000, which is almost doubling our goal. And at the beginning, we were wondering, was the YouTube glitch going to screw the whole thing up? And it didn't. The LSA came through once again, and hell or high water, or YouTube glitch or not, the LSA always comes through for Ukraine. And huge shout out to everyone for that and for making another successful fundraiser. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say that it is unbelievable to see that so many of y'all have once again supported the fundraiser tonight and helped it to get to where it is. It's around $5,631 at this moment. And it's crazy to think that this channel is able to do that, even with a lot of our supporters not able to donate to this fundraiser at the moment. That is crazy to me, and it's just nuts to realize how much of a massive channel this is, and how we are able to do so many great things and be a massive force of good here on the internet. One of the greatest communities out there, in my opinion. I just can't say it enough. I got to thank each and every one of y'all once again for the support, both the people we were able to call out and the people we weren't able to call out, because if it wasn't for all of y'all working together in unison to support this fundraiser, it wouldn't have been able to get to where it is right now. And so, massive shout out to each and every one of y'all. Once again, thank y'all so much. And we are going to be making sure to move on into those live chat questions and talk about those, because we have plenty of them tonight, and they're all quite interesting. So, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and first up, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, it was the entire roster, like always. Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J., Rumpelstiltskin, David Millsaps, and Toxic Bananas. They said the Morse code for tonight says, Russian forces are running low on manpower, another 150,000 to the meat grinder, and long live the LSA. And as usual, excellent job, Enforcers.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all hit that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to thank you for getting that correct again. And also thank you for saying we're amazing. That was not a part of the Morse code message, but I do thank you for the kindness. And y'all got that thing right again. And I got to congratulate y'all for that on day 767 of the war. And that moves us on into the next legacy aircraft of Boeing, which is the Boeing 767. Whoa. Did I hear you talking crap about the legacy company? That is the death camps for you, my child. But beyond that, the Boeing 767 is a really cool airplane. It is one of the wide-body airliners of the Boeing fleet. It's getting on up there right near to the Boeing 777, which we'll be getting to in about 10 days. Just as a small little fun fact, kind of a tidbit thing. 1,306 of these things have been built as of February 2024, and they've been in service since 1981. Here's one of the first 767s in service back in 1982 at the Farnborough Air Show, flying that old Delta livery, the way it used to look way back in the day. So these aircraft have been around for about 40 years at this point. They're still pretty neat. I really like them, and I find them just to be cool. Here, look, here's an old United Airlines livery. Ugh.
Oh my goodness, man! I don't know about that old United livery. Like, I just like United's never really been the best like airliner for their liveries. Like, they're always a little bit behind the times, in my opinion. I think the best ones probably go to probably Virgin Airways and probably honestly DHL is a pretty sick one, to be honest.
DHL sucks as a delivery company, but they do have a pretty good, pretty cool livery. I'm not gonna lie, because if y'all don't know, I'm not gonna get into that detail, but DHL has a history on this channel of somehow losing something that we tried to get sent to Ukraine. Not saying anything out there in particular about them. You know, not trying to say anything bad and throw shade their way, but our drone never made it to Ukraine, and they were maybe a part of it. I'm not saying that for certain, but they probably were. But anyways. Moving on from that, we can also see a TWA 767. You know, an aircraft's old when the TWA was still around. But anyways, still pretty cool. I think it's a neat aircraft. It's a neat design. But to be, oh my god, it's an Aeroflot 767.
Oh, Aeroflop.
Yeah, you know what Aeroflot means in Russian? It means air fleet. That's literally just what it means. That is the stupidest name for an airline I've ever heard. Let me go get a ticket on Air. Yeah, it's so stupid. I mean, that's such a stupid name. But also FedEx livery goes hard. I like it.
Yeah, I like that as well. And also, by the way, I want to quickly call this out before I forget. Peter put in a 50-pound donation to the fundraiser tonight, but it must have come through as anonymous because I didn't see it come in. But Peter, big shout out to you as well for putting in that 50-pound. Very heavy donation, and that's going to be a lot of weight to carry to Ukraine.
Yes, that is going to be a lot of weight to carry to Ukraine. But still, 50 pounds, that is quite heavy.
And also, shout out to Reactor Bob, who put in a 50 as well. Tremendous.
Oh.
For us up to $5,746 on the fundraiser. Yeah!
Oh, we're getting close to $6,000. Wow! But also, let's see here. I'm trying to find some other cool liveries. Here's the original Delta livery. It doesn't really do much for me.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it. But anyways, that's the 767. In 10 days, we'll be looking at the Boeing 777, which is probably the, you know what, we'll look at it right now. I'll show it to y'all again on day 777. But let me go type in the Boeing 777. This is like one of the biggest planes in the world, funnily enough. And it's huge. I mean, it's a really cool plane. I think they're really neat to look at. It looks like a 767, just bigger, and that's really what it is. It's just a bigger Boeing 767. But let me see here. Let's see. Oh, look, here's a ew. But let's scroll on down. So here's the maiden flight of the 777. Pretty interesting livery. I'm so glad that we're in the modern day of liveries, because back then I just don't think people had it with the livery designs. I mean, it was not that great. What?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them personally.
What, dude? It said the Boeing Everett factory was expanded with 2 new FALs. I thought they were talking about like the Fusil automatic, like, you know, the FAL, the rifle.
Fusil automatic. I don't know about that, man. Look, is this the Boeing factory right here?
Yeah.
Oh dear. I've heard some very interesting things happen inside of the Boeing plant. Oh dear. Some things that some folks don't even want to speak on because they don't want anything to happen. I mean, every time I think about Boeing now, I think of, what's his name? Joe Pesci, walking in that room with those guys walking behind him, and he walked in and said, "What the hell is this?" And then he turned around and they got him.
What the F is this piece of... Yeah, that.
Yeah, something like that.
Man, I'd have to say, it's not that far off, you know what I mean? I'm telling you what. But beyond that, that's the Boeing 777. You know, just wanted to show that to y'all really quickly because it's just a bigger Boeing 767. But anyways, this isn't an aviation channel. This is a Ukraine war channel. We got to answer some of y'all's questions. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And our first question is going to go to Sammy J, who says, any details on the construction of the brain scrambler? It sounds like a radiation lobotomizer. They can be made out of a microwave transformer and a tin can. And Sammy, we're not exactly sure what the thing's made of. They didn't say that in the 60 Minutes report, and the guy would not really go into details. That was the main investigator, because he said it was classified. But we do know for a fact that the U.S. military has experimented with directed energy weapons before. And there's a thing called the active denial system, which is a non-lethal directed energy weapon that typically was used for experimenting with crowd control. But it basically shot microwaves out at the people in millimeter waves, if I'm not mistaken. It would make you feel like your skin was on fire, and it caused people to run off. But we haven't seen anything that causes a TBI or a traumatic brain injury just yet. And if that has been developed by the United States, it is classified because we don't know about it. But don't rule out the fact it could be a sonic weapon as well. It seemed to be that the investigators think it is a microwave weapon, but there are also forms of LRAD, which I think you have to be able to hear that. I'm not sure if it's maybe beyond the sound level that humans can hear, but it could be a sound weapon as well. We simply really don't know because they wouldn't go into really big detail. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, interesting stuff. I don't really know a lot about the Havana weapon, not really anything about it at all, so I'd really just be making complete guesswork on what it is or what it does. But with that, I hope that addresses my ignorance on the weapon fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Have you seen the active denial system, by the way?
I think I have. It's like that giant radar dish on top of a Humvee.
Yeah, they actually tried that thing out on like soldiers before. Like they went and had them stand way down in a field, and they turned it on like in a low setting, and it zapped them. And they say it doesn't cause any problems, but in my mind, I'm like, yeah, you're firing microwaves at people. I know they barely like penetrate the skin, according to the scientists, but at the same time, it's like, you know, you can raise the power on that thing, and maybe it might cause some effects. Yeah, it might cause some effects like we're seeing in maybe the Havana syndrome. But that thing was a big box, and it required a generator to go along with it. And it was on the back of an Oshkosh. So I think this one with the Havana syndrome is a much more portable version of that. And I'm kind of curious if you have to put that in the back of a van, or maybe they could simply walk around with it in a backpack and maybe somehow aim it using something in their hands that's disguised as something else. That could be something that they're doing, but surely it's got some power behind it to be able to cause a brain injury.
Apparently so. I would have to agree, Matthew, and I'd have to say that your analysis on the system is very deep and very profound indeed. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next question is going to go to Terrence Custer, who says, with all the mobile artillery, are the days for the M777 numbered?
I would have to say yes. The M777 is really the peak of towed artillery pieces, but towed artillery pieces are simply going to go the way of the dodo eventually. The thing with the truck-mounted SPGs is that they are a towed SPG. It's just that they're already ready to be set up and fired. You don't have to unlimber them and do everything else that you do with an M777. So my answer to that question would be yes. The M777 is it's having its days pretty much numbered. I'm sure that the United States is probably going to be looking into having a wheeled SPG that uses the M777's gun in the future, and that will be the replacement to the M777. Is just pretty much a M777 mounted onto a truck, like we see with the Caesar or the Archer. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question is going to go to the Beast of the UK. And there's plenty of jokes I can make about that one. But they said, thoughts on the Abrams X platform and the Armada tank platform, respectively.
The Armada sucks by every degree. I can quickly go through that and explain why. So here's the tank. Engine failures, critical engine failures. The 3 crew members apparently are in a very weird spot because all 3 of them sit side by side in this front compartment. The front is apparently heavy because really all of the armor in the tank is only at the front part of the vehicle. The turret has absolutely no armor, so anything can hit the turret and end up screwing up some kind of a vital system. The gun apparently does not work that well because the autoloader also malfunctions in this tank because apparently they had to try and design a new one, and the new one doesn't really work too well. On top of that, the turret traverse can sometimes have issues. The automation of the turret altogether is sometimes known to be prone to complete failure, meaning that the gunner is not able to operate the turret. If the turret is hit by a drone explosive, that means that the turret's been knocked out and the crew pretty much has to be forced to bail out of the tank because the tank is now completely unusable. We've also heard things about the transmission apparently not being that well. We've also heard that apparently conducting repairs on this vehicle is next to impossible for your normal frontline crews because most of the electronic components inside of them require you to have a PhD in computer science to be able to work on it all. And on top of all of that, it's prohibitively expensive at around $5 million per tank. It is overall a terrible tank, and it is one of the worst weapons platforms that has been designed in modern history. A complete flop through and through, and the Russian Federation just announced a few months ago that they were going to be halting any kind of development or contracts on the T-14 Armata and shelving it because it is just simply something that they cannot pursue. On the other hand, the Abrams X, there's not really a lot known about the Abrams X. We just kind of got to see a preview of the thing. And from what I can tell, it looks to be using some kind of an automated turret. It once again has the 3 crew members set up, a lot like the T-14 Armata. Most likely has an autoloader, uses a 120mm main gun. We don't really know enough about this thing to say a lot about it. All I can say is that it looks really cool, and that's about it. We don't know as much about this one as the T-14 Armata, because this thing was unveiled early last year, and not much information has come out about it. The T-14 Armata was unveiled in 2015, almost 9 years ago, and in between then and now, we've been able to get a lot of information on this tank and understand that it is absolutely terrible. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, but I would have to say out of the two, I would of course have to naturally assume that the Abrams X, is probably a better off vehicle even in its early state like this, than the T-14 Armata is, even in its serial production version, which very few have been made as serial production variants. But with that...
Man, that Abrams X and also that new Leopard, that experimental Leopard, those things are just tremendously designed. Like, I like that they're putting a ton of, like, thought into actually making them look good this time. I know that really doesn't matter when you're on the battlefield, but it looks nice to have a good-looking tank.
That's true. I would have to say they are very cool looking. And with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to, "You're taking my life." And he said, won't sonar mess you up if you're in the water and it's on? And could they be sending that through the air? I don't know much about sonar. I do know that if you're in the water with active sonar on, it does send out an audible ping, which actually can mess you up in the water depending on how close you are to it, but not passive sonar. That won't mess you up. I think most modern boats and the subs use passive, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, an active sonar is usually turned off because it causes unbelievable damage to any organics that are inside of the water. And when I say organics, I mean anything: fish, whales, people. Whales have actually been eviscerated pretty much from sonar, active sonar being turned on and a whale being in the area. They actually pretty much get killed almost instantaneously when an active sonar is turned on, because the ping, what the ping is that it's an acoustic vibration made in the water that travels ahead. It bounces off of something, and it has enough strength to return back to the submarine and for it to be picked up on the active sonar. That's how the sonar works. So if you are in the water, you can even be hundreds of miles away from an active sonar, and if it's turned on, you can actually end up getting some severe internal damage, and if I believe it's within 100 miles, you can actually be killed if you're hit with an active sonar ping. So it is very dangerous, deadly dangerous. But what is very interesting about that is that some people are naturally going to say, well, why don't we use sonars above ground as some kind of an active denial system, like a weapon that pretty much stops people from entering an area? Well, that's because sonars actually do not work above water. Like, you can turn on a sonar above water and it just simply will not work. There is no kind of actual danger to anyone that's nearby, because sonars are specifically made to work with fluid dynamics inside of the water, not in the air. Radars would do more to someone above ground than a sonar would, and then a radar is completely useless underwater, and then a sonar is. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I do see some folks in the live chat. They were saying a moment ago, I've seen about 5 or 6 people say it, that they've seen on Twitter and various other sources that Putin was apparently rushed in his motorcade to some unknown location. I did some looking into that, and it appears that story or that article or piece came out about 2 or 3 hours ago, and it's on sort of unreliable channels, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I did some other cross-checking as well, and it appears whatever it was, if that was actually his motorcade, which I have some doubts about that, it was something insignificant. Folks will most often see him in his motorcade racing around, like that's happened many times before, and nothing's actually happened. So it could be as simple as he wanted to get back to the Kremlin to, do something really quick, or it could have been something maybe dire with his health. There's simply no way to know, but I wouldn't put any stock into it personally. But what are you thinking, Enforcer?
I would have to say it's something I don't really know enough about to talk about, because I just heard about that right now. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to LSA Sergeant Figment, and he says, what exactly is stopping Ukraine from invading Transnistria and Moldova? If it is recognized as part of Russia, then it's fair game.
It's not recognized as part of Russia. It's recognized as it's a non-recognized state within the territory of Moldova. So technically, that is legally considered a part of Moldova, not a part of the Russian Federation. And for that reason, that's probably why the Ukrainians are not taking any action against Transnistria, because that's most likely something that they would have to talk with and plan with the Moldovan government to do, because that is technically Moldovan territory. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Saika, who says, wouldn't attacking top officials of a country with a weapon such as the brain scrambler, the Havana syndrome thing, wouldn't that constitute an act of war?
It depends on how severe it is. If it ended up killing a top official, yes, that would be an act of war. If it's not killing a top official and just scrambling their brains a little, then that might not be an act of war. It really depends on what the powers that be want to call an act of war or not, or whether they're very assertive or not. So it really, the best thing I could say is it depends. If it was up to me, I consider that to be an act of war. If that could actually be proved of the Russians that they're using such a system, I would say yes. But the powers that be at the moment might say no, or they might say yes. We don't really know for certain. It depends on what they consider to be an act of war. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is O-Tubes. He says, I read online this morning that a town in Ukraine was hit by a massive bomb, but I forgot the name of it. Fab 1500, I think. And they said, have you heard anything about this?
We actually reported on that many a days ago. A lot of people caught on to that much later. It was actually a bomb that was dropped on the town of Velika Pisarivka, right behind the Free Russian Army inside of Kazinka and Griveron, and it was a Fab 1500 glide bomb. It's the largest variant of the glide bomb that has been put into service so far by the Russian Air Force, and we finally saw that it was used around, I think, 3 days ago. A lot of people have started to report on that just today, and once again showing that we're way ahead of the news curve, but we actually covered that, and it was just a part of our normal news about 3 days ago. So yes, I do know about it, and we covered it before everyone else did. So now everyone's coming back and asking us about it because they just heard about it from other places. But with that, that it was the final question of the night, and that is the end of tonight's stream. I'm so sorry to end this early, everyone, but to be quite honest with y'all, I'm just not feeling that great. I feel like I have a bad headache, I feel kind of sick to the stomach, so I want to make sure to end this thing so that way if that goes south, and it may go south a little bit, I can make sure to tend to that and not be on air trying to tend to it. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. I thank you all for making this fundraiser absolutely incredible. We've been able to raise $5,759 for Razom For Ukraine, and once again help them out and helping to save the lives of people in Ukraine. I got to thank y'all for doing that and going almost twice the goal above the fundraiser goal tonight. That is unbelievable and absolutely incredible. Y'all were able to help out on Easter Day, which is absolutely incredible as well, and I hope that y'all all had a very enjoyable and absolutely fantastic Easter Day, and I hope this was a pretty much an icing on the cake as far as everything is concerned. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. And like the Enforcer said, thank you all once again for an excellent fundraiser. $5,759 raised for Razom For Ukraine to go and help the people in Ukraine, the civilians, which are in desperate need of assistance. So once again, thank you all for that. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, and we'll see you all on Tuesday and also tomorrow for our short war summary. And thank you all for watching, and bye-bye for now.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.